Whoa there, Space Cowboy. Brokeback Bebop is a podcast with explicit content intended only for mature bounty hunters. Listener discretion is advised. Listen to all 40 steamy sessions of the show right now by supporting Brokeback Bebop at patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay.
3, 2, 1, let's jam!
That really looked and sounded like you were taking a shit.
My body shook. You're gonna hear it on the recording. I was shaking.
Hi everybody, it's a monumental episode of Brokeback Bebop. We're here, we're back for the penultimate episode of this series, but for the final episode of the entire Cowboy Bebop franchise as we know it right now. That's crazy. Steven, we're here, we've done it. How are you feeling?
You know, do you ever have that feeling where you're carrying your partner's kid and then there's like a guy next to a church pew that like slides out and tries to shoot you, so you turn around and you get shot in your shoulder, but your jacket's really thick and so you're okay?
Yeah, I've gone to church before.
That's about how we've been to church in a red state. That's what it's like. You're trying to carry your biracial child down the alley or down the
People just start shooting
the aisle. Everyone's yelling at you.
It's been a rocky 10 weeks getting through this show, but it's been increasingly fun as we've gone through it. I was saying to you before we started recording, every time I watch these episodes twice for this. Every time I watch it the first time, I'm just annoyed and groaning because I usually like watch it at night, just me and my partner, and we're like ready to go to bed. But then I come to watch it with you for the show, and I'm a little bit more like I'm watching it on the computer, so I'm a little bit less distracted maybe, even though you're just yibbering and yabbering
I am.
the
I like
entire
to provide
time.
commentary.
I always have more fun. Like I was saying, regardless of if this episode that we're about to talk about is a good episode of TV or not, I was smiling and laughing and entertained the whole time just now.
Yeah, it's great. You know, I think that if nothing else, Zach, this 10-episode foray into the live-action Bebop has given me even more appreciation for
the original. Me
the
too.
Original, yeah.
Absolutely, me too. Because I think when we were going through it, if I went back and revisited, I was a little bit more like, I don't know you yet, and I'm trying to find my angle into you. So I was a little 1 foot in the water while going through it. And absolutely, watching this one, it's making me think, oh no, they did these characters right. And they did these situations right. And this isn't that, and I miss it.
It's crazy how wrong you can get something.
Yeah.
Which is shocking because they already showed how to do it right once, Zach. I don't know why they said, you know what, I think
how wrong
we
you
have a better
can get
idea.
something while like having all of the pieces and somehow by mistake a couple pieces fit together. But because like if you had a 1,000-piece puzzle and you dump it out on a table, like 2 or 3 of the pieces would be like already together just by some happenstance. That's what watching the show is like. There are little threads that you're like, oh, that's something. Like Faye is kind of interesting as a character. Their take this time, and then in this episode she says, "I'm the fucking funnest." And I was like, oh no, the rest of the pieces are nowhere to be found. We're going to talk about the episode and get a little more superlative about the live action version of the show as a whole. But is there anything you want to talk about before we dive on in this week?
You know, I normally talk about anime here.
Sure.
And so the anime season is kind of weird because the fall season is the last one of the year, and then the winter one starts the next year. So
is it on most of the year? Because I feel like there's so many episodes of a lot of shows.
So shows either go about it one of 3 ways, Zach.
Let's hear it.
They have a 13-episode season that airs for one season of the year.
Kind of makes sense for Cowboy Bebop. Like, it's thought of as one thing, but it was kind of like 2 halves.
Well, or they do what, like, a lot of higher budget shows do is they air in 2 cores, so they'll do 13 episodes at the beginning of the year, 13 episodes at the end of the year.
But it's one season.
They'll do season. What other I guess there's two more options. But or they'll air just in 2 consecutive seasons. Like My Hero Academia is airing in the fall season, it's going to start again for the winter season. Or they are a show like One Piece that just keeps coming out every week forever.
It's actually fun for me to hear you talk about that stuff because I miss the days of network television following the release schedules. When fall comes, you've got all of the new shows and you kind of try them all out to see what works for you. I'm really happy to live in the world where you can just kind of watch whatever you want whenever, and there's so many phenomenal TV shows that you just got to pick what's most important to you. And like me, plan on when I'm in like my 60s and 70s doing nothing but just catching up on all the shit that I never got to.
You're like, finally, season 2 of
Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. But it's fun to hear you talk about that because I used to just look at that stuff and the ratings.
This scratches my itch for that because it's
sure.
the only shows that I watch weekly other than RuPaul's Drag Race and Hell's Kitchen and I guess Bob's Burgers, but is anime. And seeing what shows are sequels that are coming out that I want to see, what are the new shows that look wild that I want to check out, which honestly this winter season's pretty light on a lot of things. There's a lot of sequels that are coming out, but nothing new that looks revolutionary except for Buddy Daddies, which looks fantastic.
If that's not us when we have kids.
From what I've seen from the trailer, it looks like it's about an assassin or something and his like regular dude friend, and for some reason, or maybe they're both assassins or spies or something, but they end up with like taking in this like 6-year-old girl together that they have to figure out how to raise while still being spies, and it looks like it might be cute.
Interesting. You'll have to let me know how it is. I'm sure you will.
I will. But in this time right now where it's between the seasons and end of the year, I've been finishing shows that I started and then dropped because I got too busy. So I've gotten to finish a few of those, and pretty solid. I mean, Call of the Night is one that I really liked this year. I talked about it on the show. It's like lo-fi Twilight, but instead of Seattle angsty teens, the vampires are like sleek anime girls that are kind of like badass and alternative. So that's cool.
I like that.
And then I finished the second and probably final season of Princess Connect Redive, which is based off of a phone game.
You mentioned that one recently.
But that show slaps. Really, really good. The animation is pretty ridiculous.
I've been doing a lot of catching up on film. I won't go too much into it, but I will say if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it or heard of it, seek out the film After Sun. You could be hearing this like a year from right now, but I'm catching up for the 2023 Oscars. And it's just one of those movies that the only other 5-star I gave out, which if you want, follow me on Letterboxd, Zach Pruitt. It's the only 5-star I gave out other than Everything Everywhere All at Once this year, which is kind of an obvious movie. And it's just After Sun is one of those movies that I saw 3 days ago and I can't stop thinking about it and like relating it to my own life. So if you have a spare 2 hours and you don't mind getting a little existential, maybe getting in the feels a little bit, go check out After Sun.
Now, do you make like a yearly ranking of your movies that you've seen? So like, I know you score them all, but are you going to like make like a top 10 list? Because I think I'm going to do that with my anime this year as well. I normally do.
There have been some years where I've done that, but there have been years where I haven't seen enough movies to do it. But I think around the time of the Oscars this year, I'm going to try to have... I'm in, I don't know, at least seeing a good 30, 40 movies probably that came out this year. So I probably will do something like that.
Nice. Yeah.
Maybe we can milk some sweet content out of it.
I think we can. We can do our top 10 list. I'll do my top 10 anime. I only gave out 2 10s this year.
And I'm sure if you looked into it, you could do a top 5 films of the year, maybe even top 10 films that you saw.
Could, yeah.
Because we've talked about quite a few.
I've seen a few in the theater. It's nice because this year I feel like I've been to the theater more again after...
It's been a great year for film. I could do a whole hour about how revitalizing between the 2 behemoth blockbusters this year. Well, there are more, but the 2 really seem like Top Gun Maverick and Avatar The Way of Water, which are just like demolishing records. Of course, there's Black Panther, Wakanda Forever there as well. But I feel like we're kind of moving past the Marvel era of film a little bit. That's not Wakanda Forever's fault, but it's kind of coming out at that time. But the 2, like Top Gun is like the return to blockbusters where they filmed all that shit.
Yeah.
And they're in those planes in ways that we haven't seen on film in a movie that feels like a throwback to the yesteryear blockbusters in a world that's so Marvel dominated. And then there's The Way of Water that's a fucking technical behemoth that is literally a new type of filmmaking was invented to make this movie. And people are going back to the theaters to see these movies, and that's great.
Yeah, this was the first year in a while that I saw the same movie in the theater more than once.
Wakanda Forever or
Wakanda Forever I saw more than once, and then Everything All at Once I think I only saw in the theater one time. But that's another movie that I watched, immediately again because it was so good and enjoyable.
There are moments in that movie that I want to put in my editing software so I can go frame by frame through some of the verse jumping sequences, or like the fight near the end between mother and daughter where they keep changing locations. It's just insane. And it's a movie that was made on a relatively small budget, which makes it even more impressive. And gosh, when you're listening to this, maybe it already did or didn't, but I hope it wins the Best Picture.
Me too.
What a cool original film. That's exactly my cup of tea.
Yeah.
The sense of humor and the family messages and the complicated relationships. It's my cup of tea, and I love that it's getting such widespread. Like, everybody loves it and is raving about it.
Yeah. Seeing that movie and then within the same month seeing Multiverse of Madness was such a mind fuck because they do it so right and Everything Everywhere All at Once and so poorly in Multiverse of Madness.
Both movies maybe getting nominated for Oscars.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If Multiverse of Madness wins a special effects award, I'm going to fucking riot.
Marvel movies always get those nominations because and we'll move off of this literally after this, but the Academy is pretty good in technical achievement awards. Like, it doesn't matter if the movie is bad.
Yeah.
That's not what they're looking at for those awards. It's what was the most outstanding of the year in technical. And I don't know if that movie was. I don't know.
They do a bad job in some parts.
I just feel like before I saw Avatar, they showed the trailer for the new Ant-Man movie. And I just feel like with that Marvel filmmaking, you can tell everybody's on this platform.
Yeah.
And then the big, expansive, cool, weird, wild world around them is cool, but that's all cartoon CGI.
It's all
weird
cartoon
effects.
CGI.
It's all happening on like a soundstage, and I can kind of tell.
Because they probably have used the same soundstage for all 25 movies they've made in the last 3 years.
I could go on for a while about how much I don't like Marvel, and without having seen a lot of them, it's just because I think they've kind of ruined blockbusters.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Cowboy Bebop, because there probably is a lot to say this week, because it is
a blockbuster in its own
final
right.
episode of the franchise as we have it so far. We're talking about the 10th and final episode of the live-action Netflix Cowboy Bebop series. This episode is, for some reason, called Supernova Symphony.
Yeah, like
Bittersweet
that
Symphony
song.
and Champagne Supernova. Maybe for the end of this podcast, I'll play those two songs on top of each other at the same time.
That would be great.
This episode was directed by Michael Cattleman. He directed a lot of episodes of the show. He directed Dog Star Swing, Callisto Soul, Binary Two-Step, and the previous episode, Blue Crow Waltz. And it was written by Christopher Yost, who wrote the first episode, Cowboy Gospel, and also co-wrote Dog Star Swing. And it originally aired along with the rest of the series on November 19th, 2021. Let's not waste any time. Let's do some trivia. I've got a whopping 2 questions.
Wow, I've got a whopping 2 questions for you, Zach.
You
I
go
even
first,
made laid out like I was going to do 3 questions.
I wanted to do more, but then
2.
I was just enjoying the spectacle, I suppose.
All right, my first question for you, Zach. What planet is Anna's on?
Oh, man. Mars?
Ooh, we were looking for Tharsis.
Oh, Tharsis. Okay, I had no idea. I just pulled that one out of my ass. I should have known it was a made-up
How
one.
far are they, in Star Wars space? Like, are they going super far away? Because I don't know where the fuck Tharsis is.
I also had the thought during this episode, when they go into do they call it hyperspace?
Probably.
The little tunnel thing that they go through. There's one port per planet, one tunnel thing per planet, but the planet's huge. And what if 2 of the probably millions of ship in the space, or 2,500 people are trying to get in at the same time?
Well, that's why they have gates and people manning the gates, Zach. They say, whoa, 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 there's somebody coming from real far away. Get out of the way. Get out of the way.
Space travel is so normal these days in the show that you can get anywhere, wherever, whenever. But there's only ever 2 ships in the sky.
Yeah, in all of space.
Okay, my first question. How far does Faye extend the image border of her childhood video?
Ooh, let's see. Was it like
Unhance,
35% or something?
Really close. Do you want to try again?
33?
Closer. It was just 30.
30%. Ooh, a
Triples is
flat
best.
30.
Yeah.
Dirty 30.
You go ahead.
What animal does Julia compare Vicious to?
I don't know, so I'm going to say something silly. A penguin?
Ooh, closer than you may think. It was a jackal.
Oh, I remember that part.
Mhm.
Okay, my last question. Where did the syndicate kidnap Kimmy?
Ooh, they took her right out of school.
But where? Yeah. Fooled ya.
Where did they hold her
where
while they
is her school?
Oh,
They say it in
her
the same
school
line.
in Europa.
There you go. Good job.
Mm-hmm. She
Winner,
goes to
winner.
a fancy European school.
All right, everyone. You've been listening for 39 episodes. You know how this works. Next, Steven will be challenged to tell us everything that happened
Ooh,
this
psych,
week
plot
on-
twist.
Huh?
Zach, you're wrong.
Huh.
You do it on this show.
Oh. I don't really want to this time.
Well, guess what, Zach? We're
Yeah.
going to find out how well
No,
you
not what it's called. Try
comprehended
again.
the episode.
I guess.
We're going to find out.
Yeah, roll it back.
Yeah, we're going to find out, did Zach comprehend the episode this week?
Oh,
Zach
that
couldn't even
sting.
comprehend the rules of the show. So my thoughts on his taking in of the deep, beautiful, tortured story that is bittersweet Supernova.
Supernova Symphony.
Bittersweet soundscape.
The Ballad of Fallen Jet's Daughter.
Oh, I see. They didn't have to call it that because Vicious said the words angel and devil a bunch of times.
Well, I'm not carrying the weight of this segment, Steven. I won't carry that weight.
Well, if you decide to start with the last episode of the show, I'll explain the rules. I'm going to give Zach 20 seconds to
Not
give
the
me
last
the
episode of the
rundown,
show.
top to bottoms, of this episode. Also, with Vicious and Spike, people may think that Vicious is a top, but Vicious is power bottom all the way, and Spike is
I
strictly top.
completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
The moment in the end with Vicious and Julia has big, like, they might peg later energy. And he's
Yeah.
going to love it. He's going to do
Yeah.
that weird smile thing. Okay.
It's great. All right, Zach, are you ready? How are you feeling about this?
Not great. This is a pretty busy episode. A lot going
It's
on.
very busy.
I'm not going to get much, if any.
If you thought last week's was tough.
And I feel like I did well. Didn't I get a B or something last time?
Yeah, you did do well.
Okay. Not expecting
Okay.
that this time. I have put zero thought into this.
Well, Zach, 20 seconds
Yeah.
on the board.
Sure.
Vanna, take us away.
Have you ever watched a Wheel of Fortune?
I'd like to make it a true daily double, Zach. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Vicious has kidnapped Jet's daughter to get back to Spike. Jet knows who Spike was and is really angry and wants to kill him. Takes him to Vicious. They kidnap him. They get tied up in the church from Ballad of Fallen Angels. Vicious and Spike have their big fight. After everybody gets away, Faye helps save them and Jet gets out. Julia kills Vicious but doesn't, and then tries to kill Spike, pushes him out the window. She's the syndicate now. It's been Julia.
Stop.
I don't know. I did okay, kind of.
You did do
'Cause I just
great on the
kept
second
going,
half of the
going.
episode.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember if
Didn't
there's
get any
anything else
Faye,
that happened
really.
the first half of the
Oh,
episode. that
Faye
you didn't
looking
mention.
for who she really is. I didn't get in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a
Didn't
B
get
plus this week, Zach.
Thanks.
Why not? Why the
it
hell
was
not?
a little panicky, but I think I got quite a bit. I
Yeah.
thought I had less time than what ended up being there.
Yeah, you pretty much got it after 14 seconds.
Cool.
Yeah, B plus.
B plus. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. What's there to do next? Talk about the episode?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, this is the end of the series. I think we should kind of go character by character
Yeah,
and
because talk about how the
where
beats
it
wrap
leads
up.
them. So where do you want to start?
Radical Edward. I'm just kidding. Let's
We'll
start
get
with Spike. Spike.
Okay.
This is Spike's first major moment in the 5th episode of the anime.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of combined with the fight from the end of the anime.
Except nobody dies, except for everybody that's around them. But
Yeah.
literally no important character dies, and I feel like they could have wasted somebody. You said at one point you thought Anna was going to die.
Yeah.
Totally could have.
Totally could have. That's inconsequential.
Yeah. And
You
it
still
would have
have
been
Bryn.
affecting because she's in a lot of the season.
Yeah. So
Spike.
I like a show with stakes, Zach.
Sure.
And it's hard when doing a reboot or remake retelling to have stakes.
Better Call Saul does it really well, but it does not happen very often.
Well, and it's hard, but that's why you have a character like Anna who is new, or you have these side characters that are more important.
Vicious and Julia dynamic.
Yeah, you could have easily taken out one of them and done something. I think you should keep Vicious of the two. Nothing against the Julia actress or portrayal, but
yeah,
Julia's a character that in the show gets killed off 10 minutes after we get to know her anyway.
She's served her purpose in this series as much as she does in the other one.
Yeah.
Or it would have even been interesting if, what does this show look like if they make the big decision to kill off Vicious here?
Yeah, I think that would have been
that
bold,
blows
at
up
least.
the entire thing.
And would have opened the door for them to tell a different story, which is what they kind of wanted to do anyway.
Sure. I think
Yeah.
John Cho is good in this episode.
I do.
I have the same complaint that I've had all season, is that they aren't subtle enough to make Spike as dynamic of a character as he is in the original. But they don't really need that out of him in this one, because things are just kind of happening to him.
Exactly.
And then he gets to be like the badass fighter, even though it's kind of a clunky scene as far as filmmaking and fight choreography perspective.
Yeah,
he gets
lot of
to be the
cuts.
badass we've kind of been wanting him to be all season, even if it doesn't hit as hard. I think Spike has a good episode. And it's more about the characters around him than him, but it ends the season with Spike in an kind of interesting place that we don't get in the original, where his friendship with Jet has dissolved.
Yeah.
He's on his own. And Julia is no longer an object of his desire. Julia is the one that pushes him out the window in that big moment. This opens up his character to hopefully have done something maybe more interesting in the second season.
Well, and it shows a different Spike, who now, instead of thinking of Julia as this person that he has to go after and
This
save
faded
and
memory.
be with, now
Yeah.
she's somebody who twice has not followed through in the way that he expected, and he's been basically killed twice because of it.
And it kind of tracks for this version of the characters, because sure, Spike and Julia had a really important fling. But time after time, Julia in the show has shown that while Vicious might not be her interest, the Syndicate kind of is.
Yeah.
So she, of course, has been in this lifestyle for a long time now, and maybe she's more into it than we thought. Who do we want to jump off the Spike? Do you want to talk about Vicious and Julia, since we kind of are talking
let's
about
do
them
it.
anyway?
I think that the second half of this season, the most interesting part of the show has been the dive into Vicious and Julia.
I agree.
The politics of the Syndicate and their own relationship, which they don't really touch on in any sort of compelling way in the anime. It's kind of just, okay, Vicious is a bad guy. He's kind of been keeping Julia as his wife because she thinks that Spike is dead, and I guess Vicious was the only option because he's going to kill her otherwise.
Completely agree.
But that's not really the story that we get in this show. I mean, Julia was with Vicious of her own choosing.
But it was always kept vague of how much of her own choosing, and I don't know.
Vicious, I think, has another great episode. Like, we praised the actor a ton last time, and I think he has just as good an episode this week. His, how many times did you fuck Phyllis?
I just love the snotty nose smile that he does. I had another really good time choosing to watch the choices that actor was making this episode instead of taking anything too seriously.
Yeah, I think
he does a good job in the sword fight.
Yeah, he did. And he bounding around there doing his thing. But it was, of the fight, I enjoyed his sword usage, and there were some cool concepts about like using the sword to throw the gun up in the air and grabbing it. That's kind of badass.
Sure.
Although, as much as I did enjoy getting to see some of the action scenes, have you ever seen like a Steven Seagal movie that came out in the last 10 years?
Is that why you were groaning when the split screen thing started happening?
Well,
you were. It was noticeably unpleasant for you.
I did not like the switch to a split screen, but not all the screen.
No, I haven't.
Western.
But I'll tell you what. I've heard that Steven Seagal in his movies these days spends more of the movie sitting down than it looks like.
Yes. So he always is
Like
wearing the
fighting from a
same like
chair.
orange hunting glasses and like this
Sure.
vest, and he has a ponytail. But it's basically like it will cut to him pointing the gun at the camera and he'll shoot, and like and over the shoulder you'll see the bad guy like fall, and then it will cut to him doing the same thing at a slightly different angle like 7 times. And that's a little bit what the fight felt like when like Spike was like an inch away from the guy and he said boom, and then there was like a little dot of red and the guy kind of fell back, which isn't the fault of the performers. It's just the effects on this show did not live up to the budget and production behind the show.
And also, part of it might be that what in the cartoon anime, I know people probably despise when I refer to it as a cartoon. When the toon does, it just wastes people and we don't even think about it because of the medium.
Yeah.
It's a little more brutal if we see all these people bleeding and
sure, if there's
so
much of a blood splatter and
they need, I don't know, I think to be able to waste people like that and not be like these people are killing people, like Jet being mad that Spike killed people for the Syndicate when like
they've been
killed
busting
50,
caps.
60 people
Yeah.
in this episode together.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so as much as I enjoy watching Vicious in this episode, there's a little bit more to say about Julia because they change how we look at that character in this episode.
Yeah.
It begins with the aftermath from her kind of staging a coup on Vicious, and Vicious like punishing her, like smashing a glass on her and being like, I will hurt you in new ways and then hurt you some more.
You'll wish for death and then I'll just keep hurting you.
And then Julia looks him in the eye and says, you're a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
Julia is, even though it's not a super compelling version of the character, she's kind of a badass in this episode.
Yeah. She really is.
We think we're going to see the reunited lovers with her and Spike and like a beautiful, heartbreaking reason why they can't be together. But instead, no, she's all in on now I can take over the Syndicate because there's nobody else. The elders are dead and now Vicious is, I've got his balls in my hand. I can do whatever I want, give him a squeeze.
Yeah.
And Spike isn't interested in this life anymore, so she has no interest in Spike or Fearless or whatever, pushes him out the window, keeps Vicious hostage so she can say there's this thing that I guess nobody can meet with the elders, which doesn't seem right because we've seen meetings with the elders a couple times.
Well, no one can see them. They wear those little Duloc masks. Or
so she's going to get some guy in a mask. And you mean the racist masks?
Yeah, the ones that just look like old Asian men.
Okay, so she's going to get some dude to wear a mask and say that's Vicious and then be like, Vicious said, I'm in charge now and you do what I say. But I think it kind of works. I would have been, if not compelled, slightly interested in what's going to happen with this new dynamic between her and Vicious in another season.
I think that it deserves at least acknowledgement of them doing something different that wasn't a stupid idea, if that makes like that's like this is like I would be on board to at least watch what happens after this.
I agree. So then let's talk about the other, because they inflate those characters' stories from the original. Let's talk about the characters who we get a totally different story or a totally new character in this. Let's talk about Gren and Anna for a second and just talk about how, because there's only one season of this show, Gren, completely useless. They're obviously building up that probably the Faye and Gren thing would happen next season because they have a little moment where they meet, but they don't start anything. But just a little moment that I think is supposed to be read as chemistry.
Yeah. Well, and she's the fucking funnest.
What is the point of the Anna character other than she runs this bar that people hang out at and she is like telling people things?
Nope.
I don't know anything about this girl.
Her only role is the exposition that the show treats us like we're too dumb to figure out on our own.
I don't know what her life is like. I don't know what she wants. I don't know really what her take on the Syndicate and on Spike and Vicious is, other than she's not going to get involved, but then she does. I don't know. It seems like the perfect opportunity for this show to come up with some new characters that affect the plot lines that we know and love in meaningful ways, and they just don't. Pointless. The girl who plays Anna is in Better Call Saul.
Oh, wow.
Because we're rewatching it and we noticed her in an episode. And
nice.
She's great. She's great in it, so it's not her fault.
No, it's truly not.
She's
I think
great
she
in
does a good job with what she's
She has this
given.
little flirty thing with Mike Ehrmantraut.
Oh, cute.
She's great. That's all I have to say about those two characters. Do you have anything?
No.
Okay, let's talk about Faye. Faye does two things. She wants to find out more about her past. She's looking for the house where the video took place. And in the plot against Vicious and kind of against Spike, she does this huge gunned ship thing where she takes out most of the people in the church other than the main characters.
Yeah, I can suspend belief for a moment enough to think that she, with her thermal sensors, can go in there, shoot up the bad guys.
But the part where she shot the ropes and she's just inches away from a kid.
Yeah. She's like, got the rope. Oh, shit.
And then moments later, they make a moment out of, I'm vicious. I would never kill a kid like this scum.
This fucking
moments before,
guy.
There are just bullets everywhere around the kid. You say you can't do stuff on TV in 2021, and they shoot up a church with a kid inside in this episode.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. Shut up, conservatives. Big Mouth is a show.
I think that Faye, I'm fine with her at the abandoned amusement park finding a poster with a picture of her fucking house on it.
Well, that street name is different than
the
one.
It did have a different last 3 letters to it.
It's a suspension of disbelief. I don't think real estate usually advertise in carnivals or amusement parks, but sure. I think and it's dumb. I don't think we needed her to see something to assume that she's going to want to find out where the video took place.
Yeah.
I think it could have just been her analyzing the video, doing the stupid Dehance thing, finding the street from there, maybe having an emotional moment where she gets to go to the house. And obviously it's not her family or anything anymore, but they allow her to walk through the house. She sees her old room and tears up a little.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Perfect.
It'd be a good use of time.
And it's kind of a waste of time in this episode because they don't really do anything meaningful with it.
Yeah,
and that would
I gotta go.
Easy scene.
I'm going. Yeah. I packed my bags.
Well, let's talk for a second because next we're going to talk about Jet. But one of the problems at the end of the episode is it says the "See you someday, space cowgirl," wherever. What I don't know exactly the phrasing.
See you someday, or see you space cowgirl someday, somehow, or something like that.
Yeah, which is from when Ed leaves, and it's just after we've met Ed. But I kind of referenced it to maybe being like the Faye leaving, and we'll see her sometime. What if the episode had ended with like backpacker Faye walking up to her house, having that moment after the Ed scene?
I think that would have been a better ending than Spike passed out in an alleyway and Ed being like, "Let's go get the bad guy."
Okay, let's talk about Jet. I want to touch on these characters that we have left. You go. I know you have problems with Jet. We went on a whole riff on how much of a cuck Jet is, and everyone just is gangbanging his wife.
Jet in this episode first. I'm okay with them adding the Kimmy getting kidnapped thing. Sure. They see who Spike's hanging out with. They know that that's a thing.
Sure.
Like that, sure.
It's a way to get him there.
My issue is that they turned Jet Black from like a badass captain of this bounty hunting crew to
a father figure in his own right on the original show.
Yeah. Into this like
cuck.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think of a different word, but that's like he's just a cuck. His wife's getting boned by a cop. His daughter doesn't even call him. Yeah, what was your
joke? I wish you guys could hear literally the riffing we do while watching the episode is so funny.
We should do like a Mystery Science Theater thing.
The daughter's missing and Steven's like, where's the wife and the cop husband or whatever? And when they finally show up, Steven riffs something like, "Sorry, Jet, I just was deep with my cock was so deep in your wife, I had to take a few minutes to pull out so I could get over you."
That, and I was like, man, 2 girls in this car called me daddy today.
Yeah. How about you, Jet?
Oh, and like Jet is just like this stay-at-home mom for the Bebop. He's like, you're not back to the ship on time. I made broccoli. You know, and like, he's not fucking Cleveland Brown from Family Guy. Like, Jesus Christ, he's the captain of a bounty hunting ship. He was the black dog who bites down and doesn't let go.
Had those attributes, the kind of, where you guys been? I made dinner for everybody in the original, but it kind of made him more charming because of how much of a badass he was outside of it. And I think it just speaks to maybe Jet suffers the most in this show from them somehow not being dicked on making this a show about bounty hunters going after bounties. One thing I thought of while watching this episode was I have never once in this episode thought, well, they've got to get money. They're clearly struggling.
Yeah.
That's such a big part of the original that works. They're doing these bounties so they can like afford the gas to get to the next place to find out the past of all the characters.
Yeah.
These episodes were not short. They had time to do that stuff, and the show would have been so much better if it could have. I think this silly version of the show would have been so much better if it was like an X-Files-y type show where there's a
like
villain of the week
villain
every
of the
episode. That would have been fun. And they tried it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and then they just were like, oh, let's just talk about Vicious. Like, the extra time they used for all the unnecessary Vicious and Julia stuff and all the, like, unnecessary, I gotta get this. I'm fine with the episode where he has to get the gift for his daughter. I'm fine with that plot line. But that was the entire episode instead of that being a subplot. The dance recital was kind of funny and cute. That one was fine. Kind of.
Like, that would have been something that was endearing if Jet was not present in the fight because of it. We never really got to see him fight, really.
No.
There are moments in this episode, but not really.
Not really. And that's a shame because I feel like that actor would be cool in some action scenes.
That was my next point. I've grown to really like the look of Jet in this episode. I think the actor
he's black,
does
just like in the anime.
Okay job. Well, no, I think it's a different take on Jet because I feel like in the anime, Jet passes as being older.
Yeah.
And he's kind of more Spike's age, or seems like a colleague of Spike, and not
not like
a
a
guy
mentor.
who's been out of this for a while and has found his zen with his bonsai trees, but is still a badass.
Did he even have the
Right.
bonsai trees in the live action?
Yeah, there were a couple moments where you see him cutting them. It's a really cool character quirk in the original.
Yeah.
Because we see how he finds his peace. In this
Jet
one,
gets
it's
zero piece in the live action. He's
But it brings-
constantly.
This show isn't subtle enough to think about that. They're just like, well, in the cartoon, he had the trees, so let's have a shot with him in the trees. Then all the nerds will be happy.
Yeah, totally.
But it's not the actor's fault, even though I think his performance is kind of just okay. The voice is too much. He puts on too much gruffness. Make him a human being. God damn it. God damn it.
God damn it, Spike.
Last person to talk about is Radical Edward. We get a flash of Radical Edward, and my take is, again, I don't think it's really the actor's fault, because I'm sure everything that they did was specifically catered. They were like, you've got to say this like this, you've got to move like this. I feel like it's not the actor's fault. Don't know anything about the actor. It's just like the biggest indicator in this show that's full of them that there are things that work incredibly well in anime that are just not believable in live action.
No.
And if you don't have an interesting take on it that makes it work, that makes you see the character in a new real world light, what the fuck was the point? It's so annoying in the seconds we get of Ed, and I adore that character, a character that in the original some people find annoying. This episode makes me get that.
Yeah.
I'm glad there is not another season of this show, because the small interest I have in the Vicious and Julia thing is not worth Butterfly Man, we gotta go Spike Spiegel. I do not want to watch any more at all of that. And I'm so glad that that's it. And I hate hating on things because I love film and television. I can see usually the intent, but it just did not work in that moment. And that's where we end the series.
Yeah, that's the last thing we see.
Ugh.
Okay,
well, next week we're going to talk a little more superlatively, and we will kind of, probably not much, but a little bit return to the live action. The one thing I want to mention before we do the captain and get out of here, on the Wikipedia page for this show, I haven't read this, but there's a paragraph underneath like season 2 storylines. Things that are confirmed. Just this paragraph, I'm going to read it, okay?
Uh-huh.
In the Bebop Beat podcast interview, the showrunner Andre Nemec, I have not heard that name once. He didn't write or direct anything. The showrunner talked about what would happen in season 2. The reveal of the Cosmonaut.
Nice.
Does that mean anything to you? I don't
yeah,
really
the
know what that
Cosmonaut is from earlier in the series when they're like, oh, she reminds me of the cosmonaut. She's like, what's the cosmonaut? Tell me about the cosmonaut. And it's a live action.
They never do.
No.
Okay. Ed finds out the true meaning of family.
Nice.
Jet's mechanical arm trips out. Oh, no.
Nice.
While Jet is tripping out, his arm is unusable and plays the saxophone with one hand.
Wow.
What? I thought that's what they were like if we had gotten that season 2.
Like, damn it.
This is what we had planned. Spike's demons of the Blue Crow Massacre will be put to bed.
He gonna fuck the kid?
Faye finds who she is.
Nice.
Julia discovers, in quotes, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Nice.
Vicious is reborn, and Ein saves the day. I want to see Vicious literally come out of a womb. I would love that. That'd be great.
I'm
out
back!
Of like a space sack. And also that last thing, Ein saves the day, makes me realize what a fucking waste Ein was. The episode where they introduced him was cute, but Ein is also a dynamic character in the original, and he's just not here in this one. So let's wrap this episode up. Before we get out of here, who is our captain of the Bebop this week? Do you want me to go? Do you want to go?
Why don't you go first?
Well, if I'm being silly, it's the cop who gets to fuck Jet's wife, get called daddy by his kid, and not worry that much when she goes missing because Jet will handle it. But I think if I'm actually going to give it to someone, I think for this episode, and I never would have thought, I think Julia.
Nice.
Because that scene in the end is silly because the CGI of the glass shattering and Spike falling is dumb, and they're trying to recreate the thing we all love, and that sucks. But the idea that it's different in this version and Julia's like a power player is kind of interesting. Yeah. She's not just like the damsel in distress.
I think it's a great
cool.
Julia episode, I think, comparatively.
Right.
But I think Julia does a good job, but I had to give it to Vicious for 2 reasons.
Sure.
When he yells, "How many times did you fuck Fearless?" That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then at the end when he's chained in the like boiler room or whatever, and Julia walks in and he goes, "Her, you're dead," is all-time legendary moments for me of acting.
Steven, covering this show in both of its forms with you has been fun. I came in as a complete outsider, and I'm coming out happy.
I'm so glad. I'm happy that I was able to be a part of this journey with you, Zach.
Well, you are this journey. I would have never, ever watched this show if it wasn't for your influence and for the sweet content we creamed out of it. This has been fun. I don't know what else to say. We're going to be back next week to wrap up the Brokeback beat, kind of with just a fun hangout session.
Time to zip up the tent,
playing a few games, talking about the show overall, talking about what we'd like to see out of the future of this franchise, because this is the world we live in. It will come back someday.
Somehow, some way. Space
Netflix
Cowgirl
will forget they did it already, and they will do it again.
Yeah.
And until then, this is what we're left with, and we're going to wrap that all up next time. Everybody, thank you for joining us on this journey. And see you out there, Space Cowgirl, somewhere, some hole.
I'm not gonna carry that weight.
How many special people change? How many lives are living strange? Where were you while we were getting high? Slowly walking down the hall, faster than a cannonball. Where were you while we were getting high? It's a bittersweet symphony that's life. Someday you'll find me caught beneath the light.
support this show and our podcast network at patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast, where starting at $5 a month, you can get immediate access to all 40 outrageous sessions of Brokeback Bebop. See you next time, Space Cowboy.